Dear students, I welcome all of you to the chemistry class of grade 11. In the last period, we have studied about the benzenoid and non-benzenoid compound. At last we have studied about the non-benzenoids, and we have seen few examples. The last example were yet to be discussed. This is the example of the compound which is known as the Cycloocta Tetrane. This compound is known as the Cycloocta Tetrane. In this compound, if we see, we will realize that we have 2 pi, 2 pi, 2 pi, and 2 pi. Total, we have 8 pi electrons. And n is equal to 1 because one ring or one cycle. According to Haeckel rule, we need for n plus 2 pi electrons. So if we put n is equal to 1, we should have 4 into 1 plus 2, that is 6 plus 2, that is sorry dear students, 4 into 1 plus 2, that is 4 ones are 4 plus 2, that is 6 pi electron. Here we have 8 pi electron. So cycloocta tetrane has got 8 pi electron. And therefore it is a non-benzenoid compound. It is a non-benzenoid compound. So this is how, my dear student, we complete here the discussion about the benzenoid as well as the non-benzenoid compounds. Now let us study about the new topic. Our new topic of discussion is the nomenclature of the organic compound. So here we want to study about the nomenclature of the organic compound. If we think about the name of the organic compound, name of the organic compound, this name of the organic compound has three parts, my dear students. It has got three parts: number 1, number 2, and number 3. If you really want to write the organic compound, we shall write it in this manner, dear student, that it has three parts. The most important part is known as the word root. This word root has got prefix as well as suffix. So these are the three major part of our or name of the organic compound. First one is prefix, Second one is word root, and the third one is known as suffix, my dear students. Now, what are those parts? Like, how do we determine? So, the word root comes from the number of carbon in longest chain. The second one, prefix, comes from the branches or secondary functional group or less prior functional group. And suffix comes from the functional group present into. So this is how, my dear student, we understand the various um, part of the organic compound. Now, when we try to study the various parts of the organic compound, let us first study about the word root that comes from the number of carbon. So let us first focus on word root. Please remember, my dear students, that the word root comes from the number of carbons present in the longest chain. So, my dear students, here we have the word root, and that word root comes from the number of carbon that is present into the longest chain. Now, how do we determine this word root? Let us try to understand, my dear student. So, we will write the number of carbon and the word root that we have. So, if we have 1 carbon, 2 carbon, 3 carbon, 4 carbon, 5 carbon, 6 carbon, 7 carbon, 8 carbon, 9 carbon, 10 carbon. How do we write this word root? Let us try to understand, my dear students, for each of this number of carbon. On the basis of that, how do we write the number of, uh, how do we write the word root? So, my dear students, for 1 carbon, we will write meth. For 2 carbon, we shall write ith. For 3 carbon, we'll write prop. 4 carbon, we'll write, or we can write but. 5 carbon, the word root is pent. 6 carbon, it is hex. 7 carbon, it is hept. 8 carbon, it is oct. 9 carbon, it is non. 10 carbon, it is deck. So this is how, my dear students, we can go for. If we have the various number of carbon, for example, if we have 20 carbon or if we have 30 carbon, my dear students, we can even write this way that for 10 carbon we may write, for 10 carbon, for 20 carbon we may write ICOS, and for 30 carbon we may write triacont, triacont. So this is how, my dear students, we study the word root. This is now, if you have any doubt, you can ask me, my dear students. Okay, then see the next part that we want to study about is our prefix. So let us study about prefix. Generally, prefix comes from the various branches, my dear students. So prefix comes from branches. Now, how do we understand these branches? These branches may be an alkyl group, or it may be uh, an alkyl group, or it may be secondary or less prior functional group. So this is how, my dear student, we understand about all that. That it may be an alkyl group or it may be the less prior functional group. Now let us understand about all that, my dear student. Suppose if we have this alkyl group, suppose we have alkyl group, so according to the number of carbon, according to the number of carbon, we understand the branch, we put YL as so. If we write the various groups, my dear students, we will realize it in this particular manner. Let us understand it. So if you write, you see, if we have 1 carbon, 2 carbon, 3 carbon, 4 carbon, 5 carbon, 6 carbon, if they are present in the linear chain, if present as linear chain, my dear students, we will write their name as for 1 carbon, which is generally, my dear student, CH3. For 2 carbon it is C2H5. For 3 carbon it is C3H7. For 4 carbon it is C4H9. For 5 carbon it is C5H11. For 6 carbon it is C6H13, because so this is how we write, and we can write their names as you can see here. For this we'll write methyl. For this we'll write ethyl. For this we'll write propyl. For this we'll write butyl. For this we can write pentyl. And for this we can write hexyl. So by putting YL, we can write this. This is interesting. Sometime what happens, my dear students, that we have a long branch, and that long branch we'll study how we can give the names. Now for various functional group, my dear students, For various functional group, how do we write the prefix? Let me tell you, or let me first give for various functional groups which are less prior. These various functional groups which are less prior, how do we write their branch? So let us understand this one by one, my dear students. It is very interesting, as well as you need to remember this prefixes also. Please remember these prefixes, my dear students. For halides, if we start with, for halides, if we have the branch Cl, Br, I, F, we can write for them. For Cl, we will write chloro. For Br, we will write bromo. For I, we may write iodo. For F, we can write fluoro, my dear students. Now, if we have the functional group OH, in that case, how we'll write? So, for the functional group OH or the functional group CHO, or we may have the functional group C double bond O. Let us study how do we write the various prefixes. For OH, we may write hydroxy. For CHO, we may write formyl or oxo. Formyl, or we can write oxo. For ketone group, we can write oxo. So let us understand some more functional group and study about them. If we have CN, then we can write, or we may have ROR, that is ether, or we may have carboxylic acid, COOH, or we may have carboxylate ion, COO minus, or we may have aster, COOR, or we may have acyl halide, COX, that may be COCl or COBr. Then we may have NH2, we may have NH2, or it may be NH, or it may be N. Let us see what we can write. For amide, let us see what we can write. So let us move forward and understand about the prefixes for this. For cyanide, we can write cyano. For ether, my dear student, for ether, we can write alkoxy. For carboxylic acid, we can write carboxy. For ions like COO minus, we cannot have a prefix. For ester, we can write alkoxy carbonyl. Alkoxy carbonyl. For acyl halide, we may have halocarbonyl, halocarbonyl. So for COCl, we can write chlorocarbonyl. For COBr, we can write bromocarbonyl. For amines, we can write amino. And for amide, we can write carbomyl. Carb amyl. We can write carb amyl. Carb amyl. So we can write carb amyl for either CONH2 or CONHR or CONR2. I have few more to go with, my dear students, so that I may write them over here. If we have NO2, my dear students, we may write nitro, or if we have SO3H, then we may write sulfur. So let me mention them for you. For NO2, we may write nitro, my dear students, and for SO3H, we may write sulfur as a prefix. So these are the various prefixes, my dear student, we can understand, and we should learn all these prefixes as they are very important. Please remember, my dear student, that in case of CONH2, we may have CONHR, CONR2. We may even have CONHR, or we may even have CONR2. For all of them, we can write carbomyl as a prefix. So this is how, dear student, we should understand the various prefixes for this kind of reactions or this kind of nomenclature. Please understand, dear student, that these prefixes, one should learn it well, and if you are aware of these prefixes, the nomenclature is going to be very easy for you, my dear students. Now, my dear students, these prefixes, writing the prefixes, uh, so when we write the prefixes, writing the prefixes, we may have various numbers of prefixes. We may have various numbers of prefixes, my dear students. So if we have the number of prefix, if we have the number of prefixes 1, my dear students, or 2, or 3, or 4, or 5, what do we write? Let us study. For 1, my dear students, we may write mono. For 2, we may write di. For 3, we may write tri. For 4, we may write tetra. For 5, we can write penta. Same way, for more number, we can write 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. For 6, my dear students, we may write hexa. For 7, we may write hepta. For 8, we may write octa. For 9, we may write nona, or for 10, we can write deca. So this is how, my dear students, we can write. Suppose if you have, like, if I tell you the examples, so we may have dimethyl, or we may write it trinitro. I'll give you the example for like we can have dimethyl pentane. We may have 2,4 dimethyl pentane, or we may have trinitrotoluene. So this is how, my dear student, we understand the various prefixes for the number of groups or number of branch which are present. So this is very important. Please remember that you need to even learn this. Now, my dear students, we want to study about the suffix. So let us start our study about the suffix, my dear students. Suffix comes from suffix comes from the functional group. Please remember, my dear students, that the suffix comes from the functional group. So we should learn about the various suffixes that comes from the various functional groups. Let's study about them in detail. So let us study about the various suffixes that we may have. We may have various suffix for the various functional groups. Let us move forward and understand. Suppose if we have the C single bond C, which is known as alkane. So if we write it as an alkane, then we may have C double bond C, we may have C triple bond C. This is how it goes. Then, my dear students, we may have a hydroxy or alcohol group, or we may have some more. Let us study about them one by one. Then we may have an aldehyde, we may have ketone. Then, my dear students, we may have nitriles, that is C triple bond N. We may have ROR, that is your ether. So we may have them. Let's move forward and study about the others. We may have the functional groups as carboxylic acid, or we may have COO minus ion, or we may have esters like COOR, or, my dear students, we may have COX, which may be acyl group, and that may be in the where the X can be FClBrI, FClBrI. Thus, my dear students, we may have COCl, we may have COBr, we may have COI, we may have COF. Let's move forward and study about the next one, my dear students. We may have amines, so we may have either NH2, or we may have NH, or, my dear students, we may have N. So that is what we have been studying about. Then, my dear students, we have amides like CONH2, or, my dear students, we may have CONHR, or, my dear students, we may have CONR2. So this is amide and this is alkyl amide, my dear students. That is how we understand. So let me leave a gap little bit, so that we may have CONH2, or we may have CONH2, NHR, or we may have CONR2, my dear students. Then we may have the other functional groups like nitro, we have NO2, or my dear students, we may have the sulfonic acid, that may be SO3H. So let me give you revision, as well as let us write the various names for this functional groups. If we have the all the bonds, single bond between carbon, we will call them as alkane. Then we may have alkene. Then we have alkyne, my dear students. Then we may have alcohol. Then we may have aldehyde. Then we may have ketone. Then we have nitrile. Then we may have ethers, or we can write it nitriles. We may have ethers, my dear students. Then we can study about the carboxylic acid. This is carboxylic, just 1 minute, dear students. We may have carboxylic acid, or we may have carboxylate ion. This is carboxylate ion. We may have ester. We may have, my dear students, acyl halides. Acyl halide. That means I may have acyl chloride, or I may have acyl bromide, or I may have acyl iodide, or I may have acyl fluoride. This particular is known as amine, my dear students. So they are known as amines. Then, my dear students, we may have CONH2, which is known as amide. We may have alkyl amide, or we may have dialkyl amide. We may have, my dear students, the nitro group, or we may have sulfonic acid group. Please remember, my dear students, here whatever we have written, I should write them again. We may have NH2, which is known as amine. Then we have, this is what it is known as the secondary amine, and then we may have the tertiary amine. So let me write, this is amine, which is primary. This is secondary amine, and this is tertiary amine. So this is how, my dear students, we understand. Now we are going to write the suffix that we may have for all of these compounds. So for alkane, we may have suffix. Please remember that we are going to write about the suffixes. Please remember. So suffix for alkane is A and E. For alkene, it is Y and E. Please remember, my dear student. For alkyne, it is Y and E. So for alkene, I think I made a mistake. For alkene, it is E and E. Please remember that for alkene, it is E and E. For then for alcohol, my dear students, we may have OL. Then for aldehyde, we can write AL. For ketone, we should write ONE as a suffix. For nitriles, we may write nitrile. For ethers, we may write, please remember that there is no suffix for ether, so ether will always be available as a prefix, no suffix for ether. Then if we have carboxylic acid, my dear students, we will, or we may write oic acid. So for carboxylic acid, then for carboxylate ion, my dear students, we may write O8. For halocarbonyl or acyl halide, my dear students, we can write, for esters, we can write O8 again. For esters, my dear students, we can write O8. Then for acyl halide, the general something or general suffix we may write is halocarbonyl. Halo, sorry, OYL halide, oil halide. Sorry, it's my mistake. We can write oil halide. So for acyl chloride, we may write oil chloride. For acyl bromide, we may write oil bromide. Even we can write oil iodide, OYL iodide, or we may write oil fluoride. So this is how, my dear students, we can write for amines, we can write amino. For amines, not amino, my dear students, but for amine, we can write simple amine, AMI. For amine, we can write amine. So even for primary amine or secondary amine, we can write amine. This is even amine. And yeah, for even tertiary, we may write amine. Now, let us understand, for amide, my dear students, we can write amide as a prefix, amide. So it may be the alkyl amide or dialkyl amide. We should write amide only. Then, my dear students, for nitro, there is no prefix. It is always used as a suffix. And for SO3H, my dear students, we may write sulfonic acid. Sulfonic acid. So these are the various, or these are some of the very important things that we can study and we can understand about the various suffixes and various prefixes that we may have. I hope now, please learn, my dear students, these are the very important points that you must remember so that you can understand the nomenclature very easily. So here we have, now my dear students, we are very clear with uh, the three different parts of the organic or three different parts of the names of the organic compound. The name of organic compound has three different parts, my dear students. 1, 2, and 3. The first part is known as a prefix. The second part is word root, my dear students. And the third part is the suffix. The third part is suffix. Now we realized, my dear student, that the prefix comes from the branches, or it may comes from the less prior functional group. The word root comes from the number of carbon. and the suffix comes from the functional group. So this is how, my dear students, it comes. Now we have seen that, or we have written here that the the prefix comes from the less prior functional group. So we need to decide, or we need to determine the order for the priority of the functional group. So how do we determine the order for the priority of the functional group? It is also important. So it is a very important point, my dear students. Please remember that the order for the priority of functional group. So that is what, my dear students, I want you to learn about. Please learn this order also. It is going to be very important for for us to understand or remember the order for the priority of the functional group. It can also be called as the order of decreasing priority. The order of decreasing priority for some functional group, for some functional group. Let us write this, my dear students. So we can start it this way, my dear students, that we have COOH, which is more prior than SO3H. Then, my dear students, we have COOR, where R is the alkyl group. Then, my dear students, we may have SiCOCl. Then the next priority is amide CONH2. Please remember, my dear students, that amide has got even more priority. I am going to write amide once again for you. So amides are more prior than nitriles. These nitriles are more prior than aldehydes. Aldehydes are more prior than ketones, my dear students. Ketones are more prior than alcohols. Alcohols are more prior than amines. Amines are more prior than the alkenes, my dear student. Then these alkenes are more prior. These alkenes are more prior than alkynes. Alkynes are more prior than alkane, my dear students. Please remember. These alkanes are more prior than NO2, and NO2 and our ethers, they are equally prior, but that priority is less than the alkanes. So this is how, my dear students, we understand the order of the priority for the various functional groups. These are very important points, my dear students, which you must know, or which you should learn it well. And if you learn them, it will be very easy for you to give the names for any organic compounds. So this is how, my dear students, we understand how to give the various names to the various organic compounds. I hope, my dear students, you have enjoyed your studies. Happy learning.